It also requires ongoing support from the government. SABC News, Johannesburg.
All right, let's turn our focus to this now. South Africa's summer fire season has just begun in the Western Cape, and the wildfire crisis has already claimed 34 lives this year, 18 of them firefighters. This tragic record highlights the escalating risks faced by all firefighters in a changing climate. To speak more on this, we now welcome Trevor Abrahams, Managing Director of Working on Fire. A very good afternoon to you, Trevor. Well, the safety of firefighters is, of course, once again on the spotlight here, considering just 18 firefighters have died out of the 34 people who were killed due to fire. I mean, this probably prompts you to try and see what are the safety measures you can take, amidst such dangerous conditions that the firefighters are working under.
Good afternoon. Yes, I mean, we are facing one of the worst fire seasons in the last decade. Already 34 people have died, as you said, 18 of which were people involved in firefighting. Fortunately, none of the working on firefighters were claimed their lives, but it is a very real testament to the extent of which the wildfire season is in fact impacting on us as a result of climate change. And this is not only South Africa, this is actually all over the world. We have them in Greece, we've had fires in Portugal, in the US, in Canada. One fire, in the Park Fire in July in California, burned 50,000 hectares in the first 24 hours. That's one soccer field every second. So you get a sense of the kind of crisis we're facing as a result of climate change. Jasper National Park in Canada burnt out in a 48-hour period. Half of the town got burnt out, and some 25,000 people had to be evacuated. So what we're seeing in other parts of the world is something that is slowly creeping up on us as well.
I mean, you are citing climate change as a significant driver of these intense and frequent wildfires. So what strategies, if any, have you adapted or started to think of in terms of responding to just some of these challenges?
Climate change is undoubtedly the driver of the kind of extent of our wildfires at the moment. And as all the international experts are advocating, we need to be devoting more to the kind of preventative side and preparedness of our communities. So preparedness and prevention involves educating our communities, as we do through our FireWise program, where we have fire-prone communities. We try and train them to be more resilient, but it also means removing growth through the kind of prescribed burn practices that we're engaging so that we do not have these devastating type of fires. And of course, then we also need to change our public behavior. We cannot be having open fires on hot and windy days during the summer in the Western Cape and parts of the Eastern Cape. We just have to forego our braais. We cannot afford to have those embers being blown away in the winds, because we've seen what's happened in other areas, as in Cape St. Francis at one time, where a braai set up a major fire there as well. So there's a number of practical things, but there are also institutional arrangements that need to change. The kind of level of collaboration that we have between agencies and municipalities, these are structures that have been set out within a jurisdiction within a municipality. The kind of fires we're facing is far beyond what we have there. But then we also need to look at the kind of partnerships we need to cultivate between our private sector as well as the fire management agencies. If you look elsewhere in the world, in the case of Northwest Territories, where we were defending the capital Yellowknife in 2023, they had 20,000 people evacuated there, but you had a company like De Beers contributing to that fire. So, that's a practice we're going to have to see. So far, some of our insurance companies have come to the party, but we need a much broader participation in this effort to manage our wildfire threat.
Do you think, wildfire management is receiving enough attention locally here in the country and at international conferences like COP29, for instance, where pledges are being made, and some of those pledges, of course, behind them, you would have the added assistance from a funding perspective and also a coordinated stakeholder reinforcement, I would imagine?
I think you raise a very valid point. COP29 had a large focus on mitigation efforts. And as you can see from the reports from that conference, not enough came out of it for the South. I mean, we must understand that the climate change challenge the world is facing is the first major transnational threat we've had to our societies since the nuclear war, which has largely been mediated through negotiations and treaties. So this is something that we would hope COP29 would in fact respond to much more strongly. There are some commitments, and I think those things unfortunately take a while to come into play, but we do need multilateral resources in terms of supporting countries who are affected by climate change, whereas they themselves were not the major cause of the kind of emissions that has created this change in our climate pattern. So there is a great need to operate on the international plane, and as we are hosting the G20, I think we're looking to see if we can in fact insert this as part of the agenda for international collaboration, which, as you rightly point out, also involves the issue of resources to deal with it at local level.
Trevor, as we wrap, on a practical level, and very quickly if you can, what can ordinary South Africans do, to mitigate some of these risks that are, imposed by fire in the country, particularly in the Western Cape?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, as I've said already, please do not have open fires during hot and windy days. But I think it's very important that as homeowners and communities, they need to examine the risks that they face around them. And that means looking at what's around your houses, and strange enough, in your gutters for those people who have houses with gutters, because that's where all the debris accumulates. And when embers are flying around, they get on your roof, they tumble down into the gutters, and that's where you have your ignition. So, we'd encourage people to look at our website, Working on Fire, and look at the fire awareness material there. We are planning to bring in a product from Canada called Fire Smart, which will even extend to points where you can get an app to do a self-assessment at home. So, I think the message from the international community is that we have to have a full society approach to dealing with this kind of challenge.
All right, Trevor, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Trevor Abrahams is the Managing Director of Working on Fire. All right, to this now, 2024 has been quite an event.